G'day everyone, and welcome to this Beyond Blue webinar that's all about supporting tradies' mental health. My name's Luke Martin. I'm a clinical psychologist here at Beyond Blue, and I'll be your host for today. It's a bit of a special club we've gathered this afternoon of, partners of Beyond Blue that work in the trade, mining or construction industry. I want to do a special shout out to Still Blue for sponsoring our kind of registration initiative to put up a pair of blue boots for the lucky winner of that prize. I also want to shout out to Rexel for giving me this fantastic hoodie that I'm wearing this afternoon. I also want to shout out to Downer, Super Cheap Auto, HIA, Coronation, and many other partners of Beyond Blue that are joining us in this webinar this afternoon on a really important topic. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I'm presenting from today, the Wurundjeri peoples, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I extend that respect to the lands that you're joining this webinar from as well. I also want to acknowledge those who are living with and managing mental health conditions, their families, friends and supporters, as well as those affected by suicide. And of course, we will be talking about mental health today. So if at any point during this webinar or after it, you need to talk to someone, definitely, pick up the phone and give Beyond Blue a call on 1300 22 46 36. Now, we've only got about half an hour this afternoon, so I want to jump straight into it. We're going to be talking kind of about four big issues this afternoon. Firstly is, what are the pressures on tradies' mental health? What are the signs that a tradie might be struggling and need support? What are some practical tools you can take away to look after your own mental health? And how do we create, mentally healthy work sites that are good for everyone's mental health? They're the four big topics we're going to tackle today. And to have this conversation, we've got an absolutely incredible panel. Let me introduce them. First up, we've got Channel 9 presenter and chippie Scott Cam. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Luke. All the best. Thank you.
We've got another carpenter and site manager, founder of the wellbeing program for tradies, The Shift, and winner of the Bridge Australia. We've got Bardie Somerville. Welcome, Bardie.
Hey, good to be here.
So great that you can join us. And last but not least, we've got Beyond Blue speaker and a leader in the constructions materials industry, Jason Egan.
G'day, everybody. How are you? Good to be here. Hope we can help.
G'day, Jason. Thank you so much for being on the panel. Welcome to everybody. For those that are viewing, feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and if we've got time at the end, I'll try to get to a few of them. But let's jump straight in. Scott, I might start with you if that's okay.
Yeah.
In your experience in the trades, what do you see as some of the main pressures that can, impact a tradie's mental health?
Well, I think that the building industry is a pressure cooker, even more so these days in the climate that we're in post-COVID. There's two types of trades. Of course, there's the boss and then there's the worker. And the boss is under money and time pressures constantly and the client pressures. And then that can be transferred over to the worker who's also under time pressure and budget pressures as well because he's got to get the job done. I think that the pressures that the young people that are under, if the boss is under a lot of pressure, he's going to transfer that over to them, and that gives them anxiety and things like that, like shouting. In my view, when I had my apprentices, which I had quite a few of, I never shouted or screamed at them because they had achieved absolutely nothing. My theory was all about nurturing and training and education. So I think the building industry at the moment, because of costs, I'm doing a building at the moment and the costs have skyrocketed. Mm-hmm. So that puts pressure on everybody involved because budget's tight and time is tight. Clients are concerned about the costs and things like that. So the whole thing, in my view, is a pressure cooker for everybody, for the client, for the staff, for the boss.
Yeah, that sounds like pressure every angle at the moment in this current economic climate as well.
Yeah.
Bardie or Jace, would you add any thoughts to that about the pressures on tradies?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different pressures that we are facing, and we're in a really different climate at the moment, especially with introduction of social media and just the way trades are going and how we are seeing so many apprentices now coming through and feeling like by the end of the time, they're not actually having the skills to do their trade, and how we actually look at supporting our workers not only mentally, but also with the practical skills to be able to get the job done. I think there's so many things that are just layering on top at the moment.
Yeah, those compounding pressures are often what
Mm.
pile up and get us to a little bit of a tipping point. Have you noticed, I guess there's a stereotype that the trades are a tough industry where it's a little bit, push on, harden up. Is that changing over time in the face of these pressures and changes of generational changes, do you think?
I think that it is changing over time. I've definitely seen change, over the past 8 years since I've been in the industry, as I'm sure all of us have. There's more conversations happening, but I do believe we have a long time. Like we have a quite a big road ahead of us as we continue to understand how we can manage having these really tight timelines and having these really tight financial pressures with actually supporting well-being, and understanding that supporting our workers isn't going to be taking away from a job, it's going to be giving to a job, because we're going to be having workers that are actually able to show up to their full capacity when they are feeling that support.
That's such an interesting point. So that the
Mm.
idea that looking after your mental health of your workers is kind of an enabler of an effective business in a way. I like
Mm.
that. I like that, Bardie. Jason, any reflections from your experience on? I guess you work in a slightly different industry to Bardie and Scott, who are carpenters by trade. Anything you would add to this conversation?
Well, the same pressures are within the construction materials industry, the supply industry, and I guess in what Scotty was talking about and Bardie with the pressure cooker situation.
Mm.
Is I think one of the key things that I learned through my experiences has been we've got to strive as individuals to be the best possible version of ourselves as possible, which means sometimes it's the chicken and the egg. Is it mental health? Is it physical health? Or we use the words well-being. So I think in our rough and tumble industries that we're all part of, and you touched on it before, Luke. Alcohol is a big part of society still, and as do the other substances. And I think in that, and whilst we might be physically active in what we're doing, are we presenting ourselves each day in the best possible version, and are we focused on that, or are we going down a line of going, I'm getting angry because this pressure cooker is underway, but I'm not in the best physical shape / mental shape to be able to deal with those pressures. So it's a real balance, and as individuals, there's lots of support out there, but we've got to take that step as individuals to achieve that.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think that is such a good point. And just on that, as we look at well-being in construction, it's really looking at not only the individual, but construction as a whole and the culture that has been around for a really long time, and actually beginning to start the conversation that it's okay to break the mold of what a tradie has traditionally been, because if we stay the way we are, we are going to continue to see really awful statistics within our industry. I think construction has so much potential to be one of the greatest industries. It's a great career. We have really great workers, and I think we're just missing those key pieces of really pushing people to live a fulfilling life while having a trade or being in the industry.
I think that we've also got to give young people a bit of credit here, because I think that alcohol lifestyle is changing. And I work with a lot of young people. I'm in my mid 60s. So I'm hanging out with 20-year-olds, and they are taking their alcohol situation before the night before a lot more seriously. There's also breath testing going on most sites and things like that, which is getting that message across at the same time. And we mustn't forget that the young people that are listening, the young tradies, guys and girls that are listening to this, that they're exhausted. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. They've just done a massive day's work, and our industry is really hard. It is really hard. You've got to be match fit. You've got to be mentally fit. There's no doubt about that. But you've also got to be really physically fit at the same time. And I think they're aware. And you look at young people these days, they're really fit people. That's what they pride themselves on, their fitness, and especially the people in trade. So I do want to give them some credit for that, because they're a lot fitter than when I was working in the 70s and 80s. We were match fit, but we didn't we didn't exercise that much. We just went to work. But I think the younger folk are really training, they're gymming, they're doing all that sort of thing to get themselves physically fit, and therefore that will attract mental fitness as well.
Absolutely.
It's
100%.
it's a good. I go to the gym after work, and there's often the whole gym is full of tradies who have spent a day on the tools who are then at the gym.
That would never have happened in my day, mate. No one went to the gym. They went to the pub.
So I guess if we, acknowledge we've made a lot of progress, but it's a tough industry, and there can be some really hard days physically and mentally, and I guess exhaustion can come with the job. Also, this idea that when you're under pressure, you're more emotionally reactive than you are when you're not under pressure. I guess, Jason, coming to you now, for the individual tradie, what are some of the signs that their mental health might be being affected by these pressures? What could we look out for? And in your experience, what were some of the signs?
Look, I think it's if you're in an environment and you know each other, it becomes almost a family, especially those smaller sites or business units. But even the larger ones, and if you're you're having your pre-start meetings and so forth, you're going to recognise different things. Like perhaps it could be as simple as someone's continually late. What's happening in their life that's causing that? Is it, most of the time we might hang the shit on guys and say, set your alarm clock better and all that sort of stuff. But, there's generally something causing that. We talked about it before, about flying off the handle and being angry or really ramping that up and being quite abusive. I mean, everyone gets a bit cross here and there, but when you're really angry and you want to have fisticuffs on site, I mean, it's no good for anybody. But what's causing that? And then you could have the other side of it where someone's just really down, and you can see that, and they're in the corner or this and that. And, when it's a tough gig, and tradies are, it's a tough organizer. Like it's a tough industry. So there's that whole stigma about not wanting. I mean, I remember when I first put my hand up when I was 24 running a quarry, and there's this bloke who was playing footy and running a quarry, and I'm bawling my eyes out in the office trying to work out what the hell's going on with me. And thankfully someone reached out, and you've just got to look for those signs. And I guess there's the next steps that we'll talk to through the webinar. But all of those things, we spend 40, 50 hours a week with each other on a job site or within a business unit where we've got pre-starts, we've got smokes, we've got lunches. It's pretty easy to spot someone that's not going real well, not traveling real well. And I think they're the opportunities to reach out, and, we'll talk about how and what.
Yeah. So that idea that you can either be spiraling up with anger and irritability and snappiness, or spiraling down with withdrawal, sadness, you're less chatty, less banter, you're there, but you're not as engaged as you normally are. So if you notice that in a workmate, what does the conversation look like? What are the best ways to approach that if you've got those concerns about someone?
Do you want me to go again, or give the others a go?
Did anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Well, I think that, in my philosophy when I had young staff was always a pat on the back. Like everybody loves a pat on the back to say, great job, mate, and really well done. And if they don't do a good job, and it's to me, it was never their fault, because it means they didn't know how to do it properly. So therefore I blame myself for that. So therefore the training wasn't there for them to do it. And I'd say, mate, okay, this is not as good as it could be, so it's all right. Let's just have another go at that and see how you go. And then when it's a great job, well, then they get a pat on the back. They feel fantastic, and they'll do a better job next time, and it gets better and better. But the thing is, some kids get roused on and shouted at, and that all that creates is anxiety, and all that creates is a lack of decision making, because then they're too frightened to make a decision with what they're going to do with that bit of timber, and whether they're going to make that, whatever the decision they have to make good on a job of some sort. Well, they won't make that decision because they're frightened about getting shouted at. So that's a message from me to everybody out there that, you know, shouting at your staff, all that does, it can snowball them, and you never know what's happening at home. You never know what they're going through. That might be the reason they're not doing that great job. So you need to get to the bottom of that and find out why they're not doing. You know, maybe they should know that job, but they're not doing it well. So something else is happening. And you know, I recently had a young bloke in the corner while we were chatting. He wasn't talking, and he's sitting there looking at the ground. And so there's something wrong. There's something going on wrong. So I said to him, mate, after work, come to my place. Let's have a beer. I want to have a chat to you. And he just thought it was about work. But then I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And we got to the bottom of the situation. So that's what the bosses have got to do, is stop the shouting and the angry and the crankiness. It's pat on the back, nurture, treat them like your own children, and bring them up through the ranks in the trades, and they'll turn out to be incredible humans. And if you nurture them all the way along, you know, I've got 4 of my past workers that ring me all the time, and they've got their own families, and they treat me like a father. So that's what you've got to do. If you're listening as a boss, or if you're a worker, you've got to tell your boss that.
I like that, Scott. That what I'm hearing there is that if you have that positive relationship, which is kind of the foundation of you know, an effective team at work, it gives you the platform to have those more direct conversations if someone's out of sorts, or they're not kind of themselves lately. You can have that conversation off that platform, and they're probably more likely to listen to you and have that conversation, have that side chat if they need to talk about what's going on.
Absolutely. And remember, if they respect you and love you as a father figure within the workplace, they will work so much harder. You think of that as a boss, you'll get, not that that was the reason, but the productivity will just escalate and go through the roof. Everybody works hard for someone they respect and love.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. Bardie, I'm gonna come over to you now. Let's get really practical about tools, because I think with mental health, we do have this tendency to kind of leave it until things spiral to a bit of a crisis point or a breaking point. And a lot of what we're about at Beyond Blue is, how do we take action earlier before we get to that crisis point? And you do a lot of great work in the kind of the mental health, mental tools, mental fitness space. What are some of your go-to tools for looking after your mental health?
Yeah, awesome. I think so often we try to just go so big so fast, and it can be super overwhelming. And at the shift, I always say to people, as a first step is, can you just find, you know, whether it's driving to work in the morning, when you're having your coffee, just a moment where you can kind of just be with yourself, get in your zone, and just have a really honest question with yourself and ask, how am I really doing? And not having all of this judgment come up, not feeling like you need to feel a certain way or not feel a certain way because of what may be going on, but just allowing whatever comes up to come up and go, okay, that's what's going on for me. Because I feel so often we, you know, as we continue talking about well-being, mental health, there's a push to share that and open up with people, but it can be really challenging to actually open up and share with someone what's going on with you if you haven't stopped and had that check-in moment with yourself. And I think it's just such an important thing each day to be able to take that moment and get in the habit of it, to go, how am I today? And begin nearly forecasting your day and being able to go, is there something I need a little bit more of today? Is there someone I need to call? And it's just that really solid start point to then being able to recognize what you do need. Yeah. So I think that's a really, really great place for anyone to start. It's super accessible.
That's a great, the genuine self-check-in. How am I actually going? What do I need today? I love that, Bardie.
It's good. I think so often we can feel the need to put on a facade or put on a mask. And, for how many of us, someone says, "Oh, how are you?" And the first response is, "Yep, I'm good, thank you." And we carry on. But if you can begin actually building up that honest conversation with yourself, you will find it easier to then have those conversations honestly with other people and find the words where before it maybe felt impossible.
Thank you. Jace, what are some of your go-to tools in your toolbox?
Well, one of the biggest hits I've ever had is if someone's reached out to me or I've reached out to someone, is Beyond Blue has a great tool, and it's the K10, and it's freely available on the web, on the phone. And I encourage people at that point, like at some point they might need extra help other than just a ear to listen to them and a hand on their shoulder. And that could be to go and see their GP. Not all GPs are equipped for this sort of thing. They might end up referring them to a psychologist. That they're all different too. So you might not get the hits that you want from the first one where you want to get better. And medication might be prescribed as the first thing to go to when counselling or other options out there with organisations such as Beyond Blue. But the K10 I've found very, very useful, because you can tell someone about the K10 and explain a bit like what Bardie just talked about. Is if they're honest when they answer those questions, they're going to have a genuine understanding of where they are on how they're feeling from an anxiety, depression point of view. And from there, then there's steps to follow. And they can choose to do that by themselves if they're comfortable with that and they prefer that, probably, or with you, or with a colleague or a friend or a partner, because everybody's different. And then so are the steps after that. But if we as individuals at least put that first hand on the shoulder, and we're able to actually offer them a genuine tool that works. And unfortunately, I've had many people that I know that I've passed that on to, and fortunately, it's helped them. So you can sort of see the balance there. Unfortunately, you got to pass it on, but fortunately, it's worked. So that's my go-to, other than the whole support, empathy, and genuine care.
That's great. The K10 is one of the most visited pages on our website. So it's 10 questions that looks at how often you're experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety over the last month. Depending on your responses, as Jace says, it will give you a low, moderate, or high response category, and matched to each of those is that next step of support that you can look into depending on kind of what you're needing at the moment and what your preferences are. So it's a wonderful tool. Thanks for shouting that out, Jason. We've only got a few minutes left. I can't believe it's 4:53 already. Very quickly, if we step above the individual and we come back to a work site, a group of people, working together day in, day out, any advice for leaders or site managers around how to create kind of a happy, healthy, team dynamic that looks after people's mental health?
I think that you've got to ask the question on a regular basis. It's not just a one-off thing that you might do once a month, or you got to, if you're going to an individual, how you going, mate? How's your mum and dad? How's your wife? Ask more than just how are you, mate? Dig a bit deeper, and not just do that to everybody on a regular basis. That should be part of your routine as you're wandering around looking at work or doing whatever you're doing. Just ask those questions a lot. And there might be a young fella whose mum and dad are getting divorced, and it might be really affecting him or her in a major way, but you're not showing it. So you need to dig deep and find out what's going on. And then when you do find out what's going on, get involved, and just don't just say, well, that's no good. Get involved and maybe go out for tea or do something like that.
That seems to be a bit of a theme of this conversation, is the what's below the surface. We kind of see the tip of the iceberg, what's going on in someone's life, what are the emotions that might be driving the behavior that we're seeing. It's a really good theme of this conversation. Bardie or Jace, any advice that you would give kind of leaders of a worksite?
I would say be engaged and be curious. Like, remove the judgment and just ask the questions, be aware of kind of what's going on within your team, and from there just see how you can keep that connection going and getting everyone kind of curious about each other. Do you know what's going on within your team? Do you have conversations that are deeper than, yeah, good on you, that's what you're doing today, and then you go your separate ways? Really humanizing each other on site.
Jason, any final thoughts?
Oh, look, if I go to a work site to talk to them, I'll often talk about the fact that, pre-starts, you have a safety moment, you talk about this, talk about that, new rules, new this and that. And I focus on the fact that, if you're sitting next to one of your friends, one of your work colleagues around the pre-start, and they're not there the next day and they've hurt themselves, unfortunately, hurt their hand, or they're in hospital or whatever, guess what? We're all texting them and saying, how you going? Are you going to be all right? We care. But if someone was in that chair and they're not there the next day, or the next day, but they haven't physically hurt themselves, but yet they're not doing very well at all, who's texting them and checking in on them and all those sorts of things? So it's making it part of the conversation at all times. And like Bardie and Scott said, if you're a leader in a workplace, you've got to have empathy. You've got to forget about having been a leader in a workplace if you don't have genuine empathy for other people, other human beings, because without them, you're stuffed. End of story.
Yes, I think you could also, as a leader, show your own vulnerability as well.
Absolutely.
To not be the king all the time, and just let them know that you have made mistakes and you have had anxiety, from work, from pressure. So it's a normal thing for even the king to be like that in there. I say that in a very, jokingly way, but, I do that as a father as well to my children. Show your vulnerability, so to let them know that it's all right.
100%.
That's a really great note, I think, to start wrapping this up, Scott. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but I think there's been so many great kind of insights. That idea of sharing your vulnerability, how do we look after each other, check in on each other, be curious about what's going on for each other at work. And I really like Bardie's point and Jace's around a genuine check-in with yourself. How am I traveling? What do I need today? How do I stop that spiral down that can happen over time if we don't ask ourselves that question often enough? I think there's some really great takeaways from this conversation. We will send some resources out to attendees of this webinar that spell out a range of resources and supports that Beyond Blue has available. There'll be a link to the K10 that Jason mentioned. We have our support service, which is available 24/7 right around the country. You can pick up the phone and chat with one of our counsellors. We've got wellbeing tools on our website, something called our wellbeing action tool, which you can fill out for yourself to come up with a plan for how to proactively look after your mental health. We have a dedicated service for small business owners called NASBO, which is available for any of the small business owners in the audience. You get, free mental health coaching, which is, incredibly effective. And the evaluation shows that over 7 in 10 small business owners that engage with it recover from their mental health concern, as well as a range of other supports on the slide there. I just want to do a special call out to our online forums, which are an online community of people sharing their experiences, talking about the challenges of life and how they're getting through, and ideas that they can steal from each other to bring into their own way that they're looking after themselves. So there's a lot of resources and supports that are out there and available. And of course, if anything's come up for you during this webinar and you need to talk to someone, please give us a call at Beyond Blue. It's never too early to give us a call. You don't need to wait until things are at a breaking point. I also want to flag that we do have a winner of our Still Blue Boot competition from registering for this webinar. Congrats to Helen Galanos, who's won the boot, and we will reach out to you shortly to organise, how do we get that boot to you. You'll also see in the chat a bit of a feedback survey. Let us know how you found this conversation. We're keen to run more of these, so any feedback is really, really valued to inform the next one of these webinars. I just want to say an enormous thanks to Jason, Bardie and Scott for giving up your time and your expertise and sharing your experiences with us. I found it really, really insightful, and thank you to everyone that's tuned in. We'll see you for the next one.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.